So what does that mean concretely? How do you beat FDA? You have to have, for example, you take the existing exit paths. There's like right to try laws, which actually Trump just talked about with on the podcast he just did with Elon, or the Twitter Spaces, rather X Spaces. So right to try laws, which allow you to opt out of FDA at the state level.
Yeah.
There's right. There's
yeah. I want to say a word about this though, because this actually just goes into the story about you shed light on an important aspect of the FDA bureaucracy. Let me just use that to shed far more light. So that's one of the considered to be one of the checks, right? President Trump signed into law the right to try legislation as well at the federal level, which gives you what it sounds like, right to try something even if the FDA has not approved it, especially for serious or life-threatening conditions. That's a particularly sympathetic case. Here's the dirty little secret in the farm industry. Okay, there's an old adage. Anybody in the farm industry, as long as they're convinced they're not going to be recorded in a conversation like this one that you and I are having,
they don't want to cross FDA by using those.
We'll tell you. Yes, they tell you there's an adage in the farm industry. It's called FDA never forgets.
Yes.
People say that. Oh,
yes.
Regulatory guys have to. FDA never forgets. And they're right about that.
Right.
Because the FDA hates the existence of the right to try legislation.
Yes.
They lobbied against it when President Trump wanted to pass it. So any company that makes its drug available to a patient knows they're going to face the wrath of the FDA, even on another product that they bring before that same FDA.
Yes.
That is how this game is played. So the law is defenestrated in its impact.
The FDA is a jealous God that wants no others before it, right? It's literally
That's
like
right, which means that passing these other laws that sidestep them, whether it's the FDA, we could talk about other agencies as well, is an incomplete solution at best, counterproductive at worst, because it appeases the public to make you think you have the option when you don't. Dismantling the bureaucracy is the only correct answer.
Okay, so I half agree and I half disagree, and here's why.
You want competing systems as well, of course.
Yeah. So there's right to try laws for pharmaceuticals. There's LDT regulations, which allow for
laboratory developed tests for people.
Laboratory developed tests. Those allow for clinical labs that are outside of the so-called 510K pathway. You don't have to get an FDA approved device. You can go through HHS in a different pathway. For a while, I haven't tracked it recently, but there were compounding pharmaceutical laws, right? Where you could have a pharmacist go and mix two drugs together and call it a new drug, right? And FDA tried to crack down on that. And I'm not sure where the status of that was, but that was the third exit pathway. A fourth example, a big one, is off-label prescription. And this is something where, because AMA, the doctors, have a strong enough lobbying group, they've managed to preserve that right for doctors. But what FDA does, it cracks down on the poor pharma rep who cannot even hand a doctor a paper that says drug A could be used for purpose B. Because if so, that's off-label marketing and go directly to jail. And in fact, there were some, people who were jailed for this kind of thing, and there's a whole free speech, case about it, and so on, if you recall that. And so the point is that those are like four examples, and there's more I can probably think of that are. And the fifth is medical tourism, like traveling outside, like Kobe going to Germany for stem cell treatment, right? So those are 5 examples of exit: right to try, LDT, the compounding pharmaceuticals if it's still open, the off-label prescription, and medical tourism, that are all ways outside FDA jurisdiction where you're getting better treatments, right? And what those do is they show the presence of an alternative, and they start to build. I mean, you have a lot of venture-backed companies in some of these areas, right? Once you can make financial returns there, you start taking that aperture, you start widening it into a tunnel, and now there's a reason for it to exist. And
you take the daylight and you just crank it open, right?
That's right.
That's a different.
That's right.
It's a different road. See, and it's very different than going through the front door and just instead of taking the little ply and to the open door crack and cracking it open.
Right.
You take a jackhammer to the bureaucratic apparatus itself and just start going, which is why I ran for president.